Welcome to the Spiritual Principles Made Practical podcast. We're very lucky today to have Brownell Landrum with us, and she is one creative person. She's written lots of books, songs, all kinds of stuff, and she goes where the spirit leads her. And I asked her, well, where are you living now? And she says, well, I'm not too sure. We're going to see what inspiration I get. So tell us about your life, your decisions, and what's happening with you.
Well, thanks. Nice to meet you. And I glanced at your book, so I'm like, you've got to tell me which of your books I need to read first, because that it looks like you've got some good ones, and I love what you're doing. So it's really powerful.
Close your eyes and pick a dart. No, I think that believing in ourselves, the master skill, is a good one.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, I'll look at that.
Yeah.
That sounds really great. I'm not sure where to begin, but I guess I'll start a year ago just to give you kind of context. Up until a year ago, I read all the books about, manifesting and saw videos and all these kinds of things about, deciding where you want to go and going there and making those decisions. And for a lot of my life, I've had a lot of obstacles trying to get to those objectives made. And last year, well, June of last year, my landlord, I was living in Colorado, my landlord decided he wanted to raise the rent 50%. And so that was kind of like, okay, that's a kick in the butt to go somewhere else and do something different. And there are not many options where I was living in terms of places that were affordable. Just to give you context, like literally right after that, I look out my front window and I see Lady Gaga walking her dog in front of the building. So, there's some expensive houses and they weren't in my price range, that's for sure. And so I was like, well, where am I going to go? Like nothing felt right except for Italy. And the reason I was looking at Italy is I was currently at the time writing a trilogy. A lot of it set in Italy. And that I'm sure you're going to ask me about my new trilogy that's actually coming out next month. So, and anybody wants to buy the first book, they can get it for 99 cents. There's my little plug. So I was writing about Italy. And the story is about a famous couple from history that's reincarnated today to fulfill a prophecy that'll change the world. So it's kind of like Da Vinci Code meets Outlander with a reincarnation story in a lot of different lifetimes. So a lot of it was in Italy. So I thought, well, I'll go to Italy. Just as a sidebar, I was fluent in college in Italian, and now I don't remember any of it. So that tells you how long ago that was. And I spent probably like a couple of hundred hours trying to relearn it when I was going, and it did not go well. Those synapses are gone, and they did not want to be rebuilt. So anyway, so I thought, well, I'll go to Italy, and I found an apartment for a year, yay! And then all of a sudden, oh, they're not taking visas, applications for visas, not at all. So the only thing I could do was maybe go 3 months, and then I'd have to go somewhere else outside of the EU for 3 months, and then I could go back. So I decided I'm going to go to Italy, and then I was looking at places outside the EU, and I landed on Tunisia, which is not the first thing off of people's top of mind generally, from Americans anyway. And so I thought, well, I'll look at Tunisia. And I had a fan of my original novels there, so I had a little context for it. And but I just felt like, okay. And then I found a beautiful luxury resort on the Mediterranean with a view of the sunrise for $1,000 a month, including 2 meals a day. So I'm like, okay, I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was amazing. So I felt, like really guided to be there. And so then I go to Italy and get to experience a lot of really profound things, and then go to Tunisia. And the day after I get there, I meet somebody. I meet a guy. And about 2 weeks after that, I have a writing coach who kind of coaches me on like what to do with writing. And she's like, you got to write a story about something separate from your novels. And I was like, well, then I know what I'm writing about. I'm writing about this experience. And as I'm writing it from the point of view of what I call the upstairs, right? So
Okay.
there's a team up here,
Right. Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
they're looking down going, okay, how are we going to make this happen? And it is just that fun, right? It's a really fun, like upbeat story. And as I'm writing it, and afterwards, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm writing truth. Like they're real, these are real characters really upstairs, and they're really making this thing happen. And so the question was like, how do you get an American woman in Colorado to meet a British man in Tunisia? Like, I call it the traffic angel. Like, what did they have to do to get all this together?
Yeah.
And the story is called The End, which is, I always say, well, is it really the end if it's a reincarnation story, right? I mean, you never know where the story can go from there. But I'm writing this story, and I just realized, like, wait a minute, this is real, and they are guiding me, and they are telling me where they want to go. And so, and all of a sudden was this revelation, like I made these objectives and wanted to go this direction, but they were like border collies going, no, you're going over here. You're not in charge here.
Yeah.
And and I found out, like, when I was doing things they wanted me to do, they would reward me with this joy and these happy days. And if I was doing what they didn't want me to do, then either it was crickets or maybe like, okay, I'm really stuck here. So it was such an incredible feeling to go through that whole experience. And I spent 3.5 months in Tunisia, and I ended up coming back to Colorado for 2 months. And I had a regular heartbeat, so I had to get the ablation procedure, if you're aware of what that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got that done in May, so everything so far so good, and hopefully that's fixed. But it's just been a year. Like you said, where am I from? I'm like, I don't know. I got an Atlanta phone number. I was in Colorado for 7 years, unless you count this year. And then I'm all over the place. And they have to tell me, and they haven't told me where I'm going to be. So
Wow.
I don't know. I
That's
don't know
awesome.
the answer to that.
That's awesome. I mean, I love that kind of adventure and that sort of, it's so exciting to hear people's stories about when they just say, you know what, I'm going to just trust what inspiration finds me and go with it and see what happens.
It's crazy. It's just crazy. It's just like, I'm living in a hotel now, and I actually really like it. It's kind of like everything's included. They have great breakfasts. And then I'm probably going to go back to Tunisia later this year. It's super healthy. I got really, really healthy there. The food was amazing, and obviously super affordable.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'm just really not sure. I know kind of where I don't want to be, and I definitely know that I don't want to settle somewhere just because I can settle somewhere. I'd rather live without possessions, really, almost. I mean, like, I'm really down to, very little in terms of possessions, and then let it tell me. I talked to a psychic the other day, and she's like, "Oh yeah, because you're going to have your stuff made into a TV series, so that's going to guide you where you go." I'm like, okay,
Whatever you say.
whatever. I don't know. Let them tell me. But then she's like, "But you could do that from anywhere." I was like, "Yeah, so exactly." So I still don't. So it's really fun.
That is fun. That is fun. How did you get to this place? I mean, how did
Um,
you in your life? I mean, how did you get? Most people aren't born saying, I'm going to just be open to what comes to me and follow my inspiration. Now, most people, aren't born there.
yeah, well, and I don't know that I was either. I mean, like, I kept feeling like, okay, I'm going to be in as much direct communication with, the upstairs, is, like I said, like to call it. And, okay, what should I do? Okay, I'm trying to listen and do what I think they want me to do. And, I've written a bunch of screenplays. So thinking, oh, well, maybe those will get made and that'll change the life, send it on a trajectory. A bunch of books, a bunch of other things, businesses that failed. My first book was called 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. So when everything, and the people say everything happens for a reason, it's like, yeah, I wrote the book on it, literally. I wrote the book on it. So that kind of put me in a like, okay, why do bad things happen, right? And in that mindset, but to really surrender this much, it has been new. I mean, it's been like, why I actually went on this trip, and I want to, before I say this, I want to caution any listeners or viewers, only do this legally in a safe place with medical supervision, right? Don't go and think you can do not. It's super, super, super risky if you don't do it in the right way. But I actually went and did a Bufo trip, if you know Bufo.
No. What's that?
It's a DMT. It's a very intense 20-minute psychedelic trip.
Okay.
And they call it the spirit molecule.
Okay.
And from a scientific standpoint, and I did it legally in Barcelona, medically supervised, the whole deal. And I did it because I was like, okay, why am I not getting help from above? Like, why am I just keep going? Like, why was my visa, not like they weren't taking applications? And now I know they wanted me to go on this path and they wanted me to meet this person and learn what I needed to learn from there. And I will just say that I will tell you two things. One is it's called The End. And the other one is that I'm writing a sequel. So I will just let you and your listeners just go crazy over what that means. And I don't know what it means because I haven't read the sequel. And they have to tell me what it is. But they started it. Is that I went because what it does is it opens up the neurotransmitters in your brain. So it's like been remarkable healing for people with PTSD, for addictions, for all these things. When you're used to habits and patterns, all of a sudden, like there's so many more possibilities. And I really don't think I could have written the story or opened up that way without it. I certainly I now know, you know, and I'm a big proponent, and you're probably going to ask me about my podcast and my group and everything about reincarnation stories and metaphysical stories and how important they are. Just start writing and you never know what's going to happen because you might think you're writing fiction, but all of a sudden you might go, like, in fact, my tagline for my novels is lose yourself in the fiction, find yourself in the truth, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I mean, I just know I was on a path and I just needed some sort of shift, and they were in charge and they guided me. And now I'm still not sure where I'm going.
Wow, wow. Well, I have my own story, which is a different story. Maybe I'll be the guest on your podcast and tell my story, but I think that having that I don't know whether it's courage or whether it's desperation that drives us to a point where we say, I'll go wherever the inspiration is because that level of aliveness is what I want. And whatever it takes to have that, there I am. And so I'm finding more and more people that are making that work for them. I mean, that it's, they and some are here, there, and everywhere, and some of them are just rooted in one place. And it varies all over the place.
Well, they may be rooted, but they're exploring still, right? You can be
yeah
from a certain location. Yeah, exactly.
but they're not physically moving. They're mentally or conceptually or something moving. Yeah.
That's really, I know you should, because our podcast isn't interviews, it's really stories.
Okay.
And so what we're doing, it's kind of like a metaphysical modern love, if you know the Modern Love podcast. It's just stories that people are sometimes the writers read it, sometimes actors read them. And so people just go hear stories, and the stories are the powerful part, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the world. So I'd love to have you write your story or take
Oh,
something
yeah.
from one of your other stories and we can put it on the show because I do. I mean, we've got writers around the world who have submitted stories, and we're on IMDb, so people can get IMDb credit. So we're always looking for really interesting stories, and it can be fictional or factual.
Oh, no,
Um,
mine's factual.
yeah, well, but it can be either, right? We're not picky because sometimes fiction opens up minds maybe in a different way.
Indeed.
And so, and we don't necessarily need somebody to go, well, you got to prove that, or I don't believe that. Like, sorry, that's not what we're here for. We're not here to prove anything. We're here to give
Yeah.
you something to make you think and feel and be entertained and maybe open up your mind.
Wow. What excitement. So when you wake up in the morning, like this morning when you woke up, like where did you go from there?
Um, well, I mean, this lifestyle that I'm in now, I like it because like when I was in Tunisia, it was the same way. Now I can go down to kind of a great room and there's food being served and I can work from there. So I've got some sort of activity around me. I can listen to music so I'm not too distracted. But that's generally what I do. And I'll check, I've got a Facebook group that I hope you'll join. That's it's called Life is a Trip, Reincarnation Stories.
Yeah.
And it's not just reincarnation, but those kinds of stories. And it's just a really beautiful group. So I'll check in with the group and see how everybody is. And then right now I'm in the mode of really sharing, with podcasts and with trying to get all the awareness of the books out there. So I'm not in my writing mode, which is I was gonna say definitely my happy place, but these kind of talks and getting to meet people like you are definitely in the happy place as well, right? This is fun for me. This is really great.
So are the, you know, we'll call them the above advisors, and we'll call them maybe. So are they telling you in terms of marketing where to go, what to do, all that stuff as well?
Well, I do have a marketing, advisor, or book
Okay.
advisor. So, in terms of some of that stuff, as far as, because I don't know, like some of it's new to me, and I've written a bunch of books, but it's still new to me to do it, like the system. Because I'm kind of hoping that if I sell enough and I get enough attention that I can maybe get a traditional publisher to do audio books and translations and all this stuff.
Right.
Um, so I don't know where that's going to go, but sometimes, yeah, I mean, like I thought it might be fun to do a podcast and meet people this way, like I'm meeting you, and they seem to fill me with joy. So somehow it's good, and you never know who you're going to meet.
I've had that same experience. I mean, I met some like fabulous people, you included,
thank you. Yeah.
doing this. And so it's like, yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's like, okay, yeah, some people are big on doing, and I've got to learn the TikTok and all those things, but some people are big on all those kinds of things, but I'm just happy to be, just seeing where this takes me. And when we first did a contest for the stories for the podcast, I got so much joy over giving the winners announcing the winners. Like it was better, it was more fun for me to do that than if I had won a contest.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know,
I can see that.
so it's like sharing this and hearing the people and being able, if Hollywood calls on their door instead of mine, I'm okay with that as long as I just feel like we need more stories out there like this, and the
Absolutely.
more there are, the more, I think it can change the world. I mean, that's, I really
Yeah.
do.
Well, that's what does, I mean, I just find, when I look at the things that have impacted me, I mean, it's mostly been people's stories, and it's like, wow, they can do that. Maybe I could do that, I'm going to try.
Yeah, and it's a trip as to steal from my title. Yeah, it
So
is. So that's
tell us about some of your exciting projects and how you're inspired and all the, you tell us about what you're up to.
okay. Well, like I said, the trilogy I've got coming out now. Wow, some of the inspiration that came within that. And I was able to do some research to back up, stuff, because when I go back in history, for example, it's the couple starts out in the present lifetime, and then they go to a previous lifetime in the 1930s in Brazil, and they're protecting this valuable painting. And then the next book gets into a previous lifetime in the Renaissance in Austria, and I have my characters meet Shakespeare and some of the real, and John Dee, and some really interesting characters. Giordano Bruno, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's like my ultimate hero. He's one of my ultimate heroes. He was he did he was a Franciscan monk, or Dominican monk, I don't know, one of them, and was exiled from Italy because he was reading Copernicus, and he wrote a lot of books, and he talked about, no, the earth goes around the sun, and of course, and that was heresy.
Right.
And the universe is infinite. I mean, like, he was tuning in, the guy. He was super tuned in. And but he was, ostracized for it. And it wasn't until hundreds of years later that he was burned at the stake. And it wasn't until hundreds of years later that he was like, okay, he got his vindication, and now there's a big statue in Rome of him. And he was also a big believer in reincarnation. So it was fun writing about that. I also went back to a lifetime in the Black Plague, and that was, I don't know if you know Decameron, but learning that story. And it even traces back to Pythagoras, which is another like superhero of mine. The more I learned about him, like, he was the dude. I mean, like, I don't know how much you know about Pythagoras, but
I know
his
it's theorem,
teachings.
but that's it.
Yeah, the theorem. Well, here's a little trivia that people don't know is the theorem, of course, is geometry, right? The triangle. And his father was a gem cutter. So of
Okay.
course that's where he learned geometry. Like, but he also was one the first known, as far as I know, kind of solid believer in reincarnation. And he also felt like the planets were making music. There's music in the spheres he talked about. his initiation process included like these criteria to join, and one was humor. So you had to have a sense of humor to be part of his Pythagorean. And of course, Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates were huge Pythagorean students, right? So if you want to go to Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato, you got to go to their teacher, really. I mean, not literally, because they were hundreds of years apart, but they studied, and they were part of that whole belief. So it just was so much fun getting into that and learning about that and exploring all that world. So that's where I've got a lot of bonus scenes I want to write for those stories as well. There's a few things that happened with some of the other characters. I'm like, oh, that would be kind of fun to explore. I also wrote a film script that's a musical. And it's kind of like, now this is going to date me, but The Big Chill meets It's a Wonderful Life is a musical.
Okay. All right.
And I'm writing a book version of that, and that's really going to be interesting. So so I can't wait to get back into writing the sequel for The End. So The End isn't the end. And how that plays out and letting them kind of talk to me that way. So all of that.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that you've got like all these things going on, It's
Yeah, a lot of moving parts.
No, I mean, it's wonderful, I mean, I just, I've I'm working on my 14th book, and I've started it 5 times now, it's I just, it's, who knows, right? It's
Because sometimes we should come to Tunisia and use it as a writing retreat, because it's the perfect writing retreat, because you have everything taken care of for you. And
right?
it was great for me. So that's one of the reasons why I want to go back.
It's tempting. My wife of 37 years isn't well, so that kind of ends the travel thing like that a little bit. But mentally I can go there.
Yeah, right. You can, well, and I mean, of course, it's just about, writing. And I love that, what Bob Dylan said about, I don't know if you know this quote from him, but he said, the song was there before I came around. I just had the pencil and wrote it down. Right.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love that.
And so whatever you're going to write, either it's, and Liz Gilbert talks about these idea bubbles that land on you.
Yeah.
So when it's the right time, I mean, I didn't expect to write that story, but I've had a couple people tell me it's a college course, this 9,000 word story that, by the way, is free to anybody listening, because I just want people to read it. And it's, a lot of it's true, not all true, and names have been changed to protect the guilty. But
So how do we get to this free story?
well, I'll give you the link so you can share it with your listeners.
Yeah.
But my name is Brownell Landrum. So I'm the only Brownell Landrum in the world. So it's pretty easy to find me, and you can find all the links there, or find our Facebook group, Life is a Trip, Reincarnation Stories. So yeah, it's out there for anybody. And I just, I've got a discussion group. Some people are just like, they want to keep talking about, what does this mean? Just like you said, because the upstairs, when you start realizing, they're conspiring in our favor. They don't always know better, though, or at least they can make a mistake from up there too, right?
Yeah.
So they're not human, I guess, but they're human, in a way.
Right, they're not infallible. Yeah.
They're not infallible. And so sometimes, we have to have talking to them going, okay, where are you on this? And we have to kind of keep tuning in. But the writing is that portal to opening it up, whatever that message is. It's
But I also think it's great to have a group, right, that you can bounce things off of, right? Because sometimes I get in my own little bubble, and it's like, I need to talk to somebody to make sure that I'm just not going out on some crazy tangent here,
Well, feel free to call me. We can, if you ever need one of those people to bounce off ideas off of. And as I said, I mean, whatever story you think is a good story, from 1,000 to 3,000 words is where we try to keep it. And it could be an excerpt from one of your books, but let's put it on the podcast. Let's get it out into the world. And because I've actually seen like people's lives really change just by hearing these stories and thinking about things differently. And for me, like, I mean, I could connect and I could meditate and I could get messages, but to get that kind of clarity from like the upstairs and now go, okay. And I tell them, like, I'm not sure I trust you, just so you know, but I'll do it.
Yeah, well, some of the inspirations I've got have worked out, and some of them haven't. And sometimes when when I asked, like, why didn't this work out? They said, well, you were up at this vibrational level when we shared this with you. And if you'd maintained that level, it would have all come together, but you didn't. And
Oh,
I'm like, ooh, bummer.
yeah, yeah. Well, that is a bummer. And then I'd be like, okay, well then give me the juice to get me back there. Because so
Yeah,
I'm so
right, right. So then the next thing is like, okay, well, I need to sort the inspiration to see which inspirations I'm going to be able to maintain the energy level to pull it off, right? Make it all happen and stuff. And they've gotten a little bit better at that, but it's still a work in progress for sure.
well, yeah, like with you, I mean, like where does it fit in with your purpose? I mean, isn't that a big part of the question? Like if you're here to write, if they're supposed to write this story, then how does that work? How does, in your belief, I'm just curious, like when you're saying
Well,
like,
for
okay,
me,
it's not coming through, how does that fit in?
yeah, boy, there's so many perspectives and levels for me. Okay, the deepest and most pervasive one is that uh, I want to, the enlightenment and the joy and the happiness and the peace and the strength and the wisdom and the creativity of being one with all things. And that's what I want. And to get there, I've got all kinds of questions and stuff. And so I'll meditate. Like the last big question I asked, I said, well, how do you reconcile, if we're all one, then how do you reconcile the idea that different people have different talents? Because if everybody is one and all of the talents that exist within each of us is like part of that whole, then why is it that people seem so different from one another? Why is it that people seem separate from one another? And why does somebody have, why does Michael Jordan have his set of talents and Mozart have his set of talents? And not, vice versa or somebody else, right? And I meditated on that, and I got that the unique talents that we all have are what allow us to travel our unique road to enlightenment. But once we're enlightened and when we're one with all things, then we have access, we have sort of equal access to everything at that point. And so when I have questions, I ask the questions and I meditate and I get the answers. And in the example in that answer, I felt like, okay, that makes sense to me. I can understand that. And that kind of has that resonance and ring of truth for me. And so I'm always, trying to understand what's up and trying to also
Literally?
understand. Yeah, well, yeah, literally. And also trying to understand uh, when I have difficulties, what's the response to that? So I've like honed some really good tools. One of the most powerful of which is that acceptance is healing. And so the idea is I'll just accept whatever I'm thinking and feeling at the time. And the more that I can write that down with specificity, the more it moves me forward. So if I'm stuck somewhere, I'll sit down and I'll write, I'm stuck. Help.
Yeah, well, I think, I talk about my first book, the Reasons Why book, I, say, face it, feel it, free it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I think we are so programmed to dismiss, oh, I can't say I'm blocked. That's negative thinking, or whatever. It's like, no, it's happening for a reason. And like there's something that I was struggling with, like trying to, and people are like, get over it, move on. And I was like, I know that I'm not going to move on until I've learned what I need to learn from this. And so and yes, you can kind of wallow, I guess. But wallowing might have its own lesson. But to ignore, the toxic positivity they call it, to ignore the downtimes. We're not always going to be happy. That I'm not always doing what they want me to do, obviously. And they're not always, coming to the plate when I think they should. But there's a little bit of debate on that. Like, okay. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like, okay, this is where I am now, accept myself for where I am. And a lot of people look at where I'm going, like, why don't you know where you're going to live? Why don't you, and I'm like, I know where I'm going to live when I grow up. Like I'm not exactly a young person. If I'm referring to Big Chill, I'm not a young person. But
But the big answer to that is that, well, but I have faith that I'm be, I'll be guided one way or another towards what's best for me, and it's like,
I don't necessarily have that faith.
well, kind
That's
of
the
you
hard
do
part.
because that sounds like how you're living your life.
I don't though. I mean, that's what's, I mean, they say it's not courage if you're not afraid, right? I mean, it's kind of like that saying, and it's
Okay.
kind of like not faith, it's like if I had blind faith and I'd be like, oh, I'm so sure. And it's like, no, I, I know that I have to be where I am now. Kind of like you said, when I'm stuck. Okay, I'm stuck. I know I know this. I know I have to be fluid. Um, but I'm not saying it's easy all the time. Like,
No, no,
I mean,
it's
not
not.
knowing where I'm going to live and not having roots and not having stuff, all that. It's, I mean, even figuring out like, where am I going to get registered to vote and, all that kind of stuff. So, and I had such a life leading up to this, so much, I wrote reasons why bad things happen because bad things were happening to me. And so I was like, there's gotta be a reason why. Um, so it hasn't always been easy and I've wanted to meet these goals. And so this is fairly new for me to be like, okay, because I mean, even those first 6 months of this past year, like until I started writing the story and realizing that was true, I was still kind of like, why is this happening? And why can't I get a visa? And why am I going to Tunisia? And why is this not working out? Um, but I guess the trust also has to be with it's not always going to be easy or fun. In fact, I wrote a children's book. I'm going to read just a couple of verses from it
Yeah.
because I think it's relevant to this discussion. And it's from about the other side and the upstairs or whatever. And
Uh-huh.
it's we decide on our lessons, the paths we will take, awards we might go for, and mistakes we might make. For life isn't easy or not, and not always fun, but easy is boring, like games always won, right? So we don't necessarily, they're not necessarily going to go, oh, this is a happy day every day, because what do you learn from that? You learn a lot more. My mantra is I want to learn through joy, but that doesn't seem to be always playing out. So sometimes you learn from heartache and learn from, struggle and learn from going the wrong thing. But the one thing that has been the most powerful thing about this year and this traveling and everything is we do get stuck in like, okay, I live in this house. Oh, but maybe I need a better mattress because that'll help me sleep better, or a better pillow, or I need more of this or that. And when you're traveling, you get the mattress you get the pillow you get, like all of a sudden the things that you think are important for you to control, you can't control. And that's a big gift right there. It doesn't mean it's always good. You're always going to have the happy pillow, but you know, I don't know. That's kind of where I am with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess where I am is that, like you, I wanted to learn like willingly, right? I didn't want to be forced into my lessons, and I've been forced into, I've been forced into lessons, and
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from them, and those have been the ones that I've been most resistant to. One of my books is Negativity: What We Deny Controls Us, and so I've tried to, acknowledge that, that the if I have a negative thought, then I'm having that thought. And if I can understand it as a thought, then I can choose whether or not I want to act on it. So when you say like, faith is confidence and everything, well, yes and no, in that sense that I'll have several thoughts and I have to pick which one I'm going to act on, or none of them, right?
Or which one you're going to replay, right?
Yeah, right. And so uh, just to kind of keep going, I know that I have to always do everything I can to be in as much alignment with truth and light and all that good stuff that I can be. And so I do my best to make the decisions that I think are gonna create that for me, but I don't know exactly how they're gonna work out all the time. And fortunately, most of the time they work out, but not all the time.
Yeah, there's kind of I don't remember the story now, but there's kind of like an old parable about, oh, the prince is supposed to go to this war and he's ready to go fight, and then all of a sudden he breaks his ankle and he can't go. Is that good or bad? And so you look at these situations and you think, is this good or bad? But then he missed being killed because everybody was killed. So is that good or bad? And you start putting judgment of good or bad. And spoiler alert, one of the 5 reasons why bad things happen is because something good is coming out of it that you didn't foresee, right?
Right.
And so the silver lining or the, whatever. And so it's, but yeah, you sit there and you go, this, if I'm labeling this as bad, then, of course with my programming, I'd go, which are the 5 reasons and why is it happening? And, because why is the big theme through my life. Like if I can get the why, I can get to the, healing of whatever. So I'm kind of obsessively get into the why sometimes, but, if you take away the label, yes, okay, breaking your ankle is this, or having this thing happen through bankruptcy, foreclosure, all those things, bad or good. It hurt. It sucked. Okay. Heartbreak hurts. And then also though, is there learning? Can you keep finding learning from it? Is there something like it led me to write a book, or this led me to write this story? Then can you keep labeling it as bad if you can turn it into something? I don't know. That's kind of my take on that.
So how would you characterize your why at this point?
My why is to teach people their why, or to get people to look at the why. I mean, and truthfully, if you look, like I've written children's books, I've written kind of sexy novels, I've written nonfiction, I've written screenplays, I've written a variety of things. But if you see them all, you'll see a thread of a vibe of getting people to open up thoughts and really get into their whys. And I think the more people can figure out why this happened or why that happened, and get to their why of why they're here and whatever their questions are. I happen to be a fan of Mark Manson. I don't know if you read his books, but and one of my favorite quotes from him is, happiness is solving problems. And really, that is a good emotional place. Like you're saying, you're writing and you're like, okay, where's the block? Well, wait a minute. If I can solve this problem, it'll lift me up. So, I think that getting to the why, I think like with healing work, that if you can, if you can go poof, the person's healed, but if they didn't get to the why, then it happened for a reason. So what's the why?
Right. Right.
So I know that's kind of like an easy answer to your question.
No,
My
I
why
mean,
is the why.
I think, I think it's a great answer, because one of the things that, I've gotten in meditation is that example is the most powerful form of leadership. So, I always, in a lot of my podcasts, I'm just recording work I'm doing on myself,
I saw, yeah, they
the
look
idea
great.
that, this is what I'm doing to try to create greater alignment and upliftment now. And if you can relate to and identify and it helps you, then great. And if it doesn't, just throw it out,
Yeah, because you never know what level somebody is, or you never know what is absorbing into them that they don't even realize it. It's not like, I don't know about you, but I've bought books in the past that I haven't read yet. Like I know I'm not ready for them, but someday I will be. So I have that book just in case. So yeah, you never know what will resonate at what time and what people need to learn. And each lifetime you have a different set of lessons, and so you might come to learn one thing one time and one thing another. Which is what helps me. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't necessarily care if people believe in reincarnation or not, but I love the way it gets people to think.
Right, right. Because you gotta think, where did these tendencies come from? Where did this level of interest come from? Where do these abilities come from? And that's, it's an intriguing question, right?
It really, I mean, I actually pitched a TV series idea to Hollywood a number of years ago, that was dealing with it. And I outlined hundreds of possible episodes. I mean, there's an infinite number of these stories.
Oh yeah.
And so, it doesn't have to be, they don't all have to be reincarnation. I mean, I've got somebody writing a comedic ghost story for the show. It doesn't have to be all that, but just the more, and it definitely doesn't have to fit in with a particular dogma or training or anything. In fact, some of the people that are writing stories are writers who've never written about reincarnation. And then some of the people are big believers in reincarnation who've never written a story. So it's a different set of learning. But and again, it's not all reincarnation. It can be the other side, or life purpose here, because all of that ties in, right? All the stuff we're talking about, life purpose, that ties into why we're here, how we planned our life, how we're doing on the planning that we did. Are we going, like for me, I know I have gone off-road, right? I think it's like a roadmap, and you can go high road, low road. And I'm like, I'm off-road. I totally like, give me that SUV or whatever it is, ATV or whatever it is, and I'm off-road and I'm going to figure out life on this direction. So it's really fun.
That's exciting. That's exciting. Yeah, no, as I interview people, I see so many different, I mean, everybody's got their own unique approach to how they're going about things and where their focus of attention is, and what basis they use to make decisions. Everybody's different.
Well, and I think that's the beauty. I think that answers your other question about, why are we all different, or are we all part of one or whatever? It's like, that would be boring if we were all the same. And I've done enough studying about the power of diversity, of any kind of diversity. And, the more diverse we are, yes, it adds more conflict, because we don't understand each other yet. But whatever that diversity is, but that's what also makes you stronger when you start realizing 1+1 = infinity. When the Venn diagrams aren't all like this, it's all like it keeps growing and growing and growing. And isn't that beautiful? Like, that you see people with all this kind of skill and this kind of talent. And for me, one of the things I love the most about the reincarnation stories is that, we've all probably been pretty much every race, every nationality, every religion, every gender, every orientation, all we've had, every socioeconomic level. So how can you be judgmental against this person over here when you were probably that at one point?
Yeah, exactly.
And then the whole idea of prejudice kind of changes when you start not only realizing that, but how you need them, how that makes the world so much more interesting.
Yeah, and also, I mean, for me, it also stimulates me to think about, how can I reach that part within them that is their divinity, that is identical to the divinity in everybody, and that kind of uh, aspect of looking past the differences and,
Yes.
and finding the similarities, and so then that's part of, to me, what one of the things that I'm interested in, because I tend to get along with everybody, but I think a lot of it is because I don't necessarily see them as the role they're playing, but the being they are, which
Oh, that's beautiful.
is different,
Yeah.
and so and I'm always trying to just appreciate the being that people are. It's like with people who are really kind, it's like it's really easy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a lot easier if they believe the same things you believe, or, or they're fighting the same fights you're fighting. It's a lot easier.
But people that are, problematic, it's the whole different approach.
Yeah, I kind of tend to think that there are people, let's just put it this way, there's like people closer to the light and people further from the light, right?
Yeah,
And some people are facing the light and some people are facing the other direction, and they don't even know the light is there. So, and so that's the kind of distinction is, you want to go, oh, the light's over here, and I always I like to do a comparison to people, to like when people are taking their dog for a walk. And, sometimes they're like, come over here, yelling at the dog, go that way. That's not the way to get the dog motivated. You want to go, it's fun over here. This is where we want to go. Yay. And the dog's like, okay, I'll go this way, but we have to look at that life that way. We have so much of the time we feel like, oh no, somebody's yelling at us or we're yelling at somebody. And it's like, no, let's all have more fun over here. And it's easier said than done. But
yeah. There's a story I like to tell. I was driving. My wife and I were driving a 40-foot RV cross country to a dog show,
oh
and
wow.
when I got the RV, I said, "Well, where do I go for lessons on like how to drive this beast?" And the guy says, "No lessons, no special endorsements on your license. Just you, know, swing wide when you're going around corners." And
Wow.
So we pull up, we're driving cross country. We pull over at this rest stop, and this trucker pulls in behind us, gets out of his truck cab, and comes over and is coming after me. And he said, "You cut me off 3 states ago."
Oh my God.
This guy has been seething in anger for 3 states.
Oh my God.
And I don't know whether he was 2 times my size or 4 times my size, but he was big. And it was pretty clear to me that, he wanted a pound of flesh out of me, he was. And I just said, "I am so sorry. I just bought this. I don't know what I'm doing. Thank you for letting me know that I wasn't leaving enough space before I pulled in front of people." And people are always blaming us truckers for the accident. You guys don't know what you're doing. I said, "Yeah, no, I mean, it's horrible, and I apologize." And and you telling me that I was doing this, may have saved some of my life or someone else's life, so that I don't actually create an accident. So I'm really beholden to you. And it's like, and the guy just, he really wanted to take a swing at me, but he just couldn't,
Yeah, you diffuse that bomb, so to speak, right?
I mean, I was just, I took responsibility. I apologized. I thanked him. I did everything under the sun, I still wasn't sure he wasn't going to take a swing at me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, that's
but
beautiful.
it all ended okay. We got back in our cars in one piece and everything was fine. But it was in really tense situations, I have found that I just get inspired, and that I'm really in the present moment, right? And what comes to me is optimal. I mean, I remember, and another story, I was held up at gunpoint, and there was like the longest 5 seconds of my life. And 5 seconds went on for like 30 minutes as far as I was concerned. And I weighed this option and I weighed that option, and I thought about this and this and this and this, I walked away in one piece, and that was all I really cared about.
Yeah, and it's really an interesting observation too about how time can speed up or slow down, depending on,
Oh yeah.
what's happening. There's a really good book about that. Fred Allen Wolf wrote one called The Yoga of Time Travel, and it really talks about how there are certain things that make time, fly by, and certain things that stop time, and that sounds like you have one of those,
Yeah. Well,
like there's so
even when
much happening.
even when I play tennis, if I'm focused enough on the ball, it appears that time slows down to give me time to get there.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
It's really like this mystical experience, and it's like, I don't know, I just focus on the ball, nothing. I don't see anything else. All I see is the ball, and I'm just headed that way.
One with the ball.
Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily be dangerous or stressful situations, but it's about attention and being present, and how all that goes and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Very, very cool.
Well, this is the way I see it is that we're all on this huge adventure using our unique talents to discover and accept and enjoy and appreciate who we are. And that's sort of my point of view about it.
Yeah, love it.
And that and I love meeting people and hearing their stories, because I see myself in all your stories, and it's great, and I think that's so cool. So
Yeah, it's great. It's really great.
well, I guess people can go to your website, brownelllandrum.com, right?
Yep.
And download your books and all the good stuff, and link to your Facebook group is there. Yes.
Yes, and I can give you all the links if you want to put it in show notes or whatever however you want.
Yeah. Send me the
Yeah.
links and I'll put it in the notes.
And I'd like to share this on my YouTube channel if that's okay too.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Far and
Yeah.
wide.
Yeah, that's and in the group and all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And whoever resonates with it, you know, and
That's
what,
right. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any idea where any of it's going to go. And I don't know if it's going to reach a few people or a few thousand people or a few 100,000 people or what. And that's not up to me. I just love doing this stories and sharing these stories and sharing my stories. And just the more that are out there, the more these stories out there, the more it can hopefully reach people. So
I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. Well, go ahead and send me those notes and I'll put them in the, notes for the podcast and stuff. And I'll
great.
also send you a audio file and a video file that you can upload, edit, do whatever you want to do with it.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed this. We could probably keep going for a long time. It's been really very
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah, no, I mean, it really has been great. And I'll always leave the door open. So if you ever have an inspiration to like ring me up or something, the door is always open. And I know the same is true in your
The
case.
same is true here. Yes, absolutely.
So, it's like whatever resonance there is and upliftment and stuff, we want to be as open to it as we can be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that anybody listening feels that way with everybody that's in their life too,
Yeah,
that here to
yeah,
support each other.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, then. Well, let me see if I can figure out what to do with this. There we go. And that will